Hello? You all hear me? Yeah. Bet. Okay. I'm Samuel Martino. I'm the CEO of a small company called Dogwood Gaming. I've been doing this for 4 years, and I love every minute of it. But one of my favorite things is trying to bring more people into the industry, because a big issue that we have is that there's just no new talent is really being cultivated. Because a lot of the game industry is you have to know the right people to get hired. It doesn't matter about anything else, which doesn't really seem right to me, especially because after seeing all these people who are like, oh, I want to work in the game industry, I want to do movies, I want to do all this, and like their art far supersedes anything that I can do. And like they're struggling to get any emails back from anything. So one of the things I want to preface this with is that I talk a lot about the games that I've done. This is not meant to be any kind of like promotion of like buy my games. It's more so that like every game has a story that I hope helps you not make the same mistakes that I did over the past 4 years. So I'm not just a random dude. I have been doing this for a while, and I've gotten to wear pretty much every single hat in the industry. I've done programming, writing, scripting, storytelling, character creation, 3D modeling, texturing, everything. And I'm currently learning animation, which is a lot of fun. Like, are there any animators in here? Like 3D animators? Hey, 2D's really hard. It's okay, I feel you. That's dope, though. I like just started doing it 2 weeks ago, and I'm in love with it. It's hard, but I like it. Oh, we have more people. Ha! Look at that. I do. Thank you. Well, thank you for joining us. I'm sorry I like started like a minute early, but you didn't miss a whole lot. I was just talking about why I'm on the screen. So a lot of these pictures are from the very early days when we first started, and I was glad that I had so many pictures of them because I didn't think I had kept things. I mean, as you can see from these, we're a pretty relaxed company, and I take a lot of pride in that I met every single person who I work with, all of my investors, every single business connection in a hookah bar. I'm not even kidding. I've like $100,000 in investments from this hookah bar, literally, just from people that have walked in. And my thing has been, I've tried to be open with everything that I'm doing. And so whenever somebody comes in and they're like, oh, what are you working on? I tell them everything. And then 9 times out of 10, they're gonna be like, oh, I do artwork, or oh, I do programming, like surprisingly. We had one guy who came in one day who he was doing artwork for it. He ended up doing artwork for our first game, all 200 something characters, drawing all of them. And we just met him because he was drawing for a contest in the hookah bar. And the guy doing all my audio engineering was like, oh, what are you drawing? And he's like, oh, I'm drawing this stuff for a Nintendo contest. And Jimmy's like, that's crazy. Did you know we make video games? And that's exactly how pretty much every single thing has happened. So, like I said, I've gotten to do pretty much every single hat in the game industry. These are some of the projects that I've worked on that have ranged from literally every kind of genre, every kind of setting, but it's been nice because I've got to do something new every single time. And it hasn't just kind of been stale. You know, the thing with this is that I work pretty long hours, but I mean, I enjoy it, so it doesn't feel like I'm working for 12 hours a day on average. But so by getting to jump through different projects, it's nice. I feel like I get to actually do something different, and it really allows all the creativity to flow. Because my other fear is if I was to work for a large studio, unless you're in the really higher ups for like decision making, you don't have a whole lot of choice in what you're doing. Like if you got a job at like Bethesda Softworks, they know what they want, and they're gonna point you in that direction. Here I try to keep it that if somebody has an idea for a game, just say it. Like if we can do it, we 100% will. It's been nice because that's been able to keep such a close group that we've had. I mean, when we started, it was 4 dudes who wrote a D&D campaign, and then we decided to make video games. It was a bunch of friends from the hookah bar, and we really loved the Mass Effect series, and we're upset that there wasn't any kind of D&D campaign in that setting, so we decided to write one, which seemed like a good idea at the time, and then many sleepless weeks later we ended up having it, and I was like, oh, this is great, this was a fun project, but you know, I was going back to school, and I just thought it was kind of a one-off thing that was fun to do, but there was this girl I was very much interested in when I was in college, and we had known each other for years and years and years, and I asked her out and she rejected me. And that night, I drove over to my best friend at the time, Dave's house, and we're drinking, and I'm just like, oh, life is so miserable, like I'm never gonna love anyone, this is terrible. And he's like, what if we made a video game? And God damn it, 4 years later, here we are. And still drinking just as much, but that comes with the job, it's fine. So I want to get a bit more into the games that I've done because they're all interesting experiences, and for those of you that have worked with anything in the game industry, you're going to mock everything that I've done, and that's totally okay because I had no idea what I was doing. But our first project was a JRPG made in RPG Maker, which I am not allowed to say my true feelings about RPG Maker, but it's not the best engine. We're running, I think it was 46 different plugins to get that to work the way we wanted it to. Half of them we had to go in and change the code in JavaScript, and I don't know how to program at all. That's way above my wheelhouse, but I'm in there trying to find the damn syntax error that takes like hours to find out what's wrong with it. But this was an experience because this was the only 2D game I ever worked on, but 100% it was the most difficult thing I've ever had to do in this industry. I would take making like an open world survival game over having to do this ever again. Like it was you were just so limited. And for instance, you have to look at like AAA titles and think how much really goes into every little small piece of it. So this game it takes on average 5 playthroughs to get the ultimate ending, and each playthrough takes between 60 and 100 hours. I had 1,000 variables and 1,000 maps to work with to do that whole thing. Awful. Never do it. Never use RPG Maker. But it was a great experience because we really went in no idea what to expect at all. Like, we had never done this. No one knew how to program. We looked at RPG Maker and we're like, oh, this seems simple enough to learn. No, but so you can also see here, I think the biggest contrast is from when we first started. There's one of the main characters, Bones. On the right was wonderful Rob, who did his best to try and draw all these characters. Because I'll get to E3 later, but we went to E3 with this. I took an RPG Maker game to E3, and I'll get to that later. But we were struggling to find an artist to do this artwork. So literally it would be Rob would draw them. We would trace them with, I think it was like a charcoal pencil. And then we would have to scan them in to use the files. And we had to do that for all the characters for E3. But this game took, I want to say, a year and a half for full development. I made every map, and there are 1,000 of them. One of the main things that I'm really happy with how this came out, and it's kind of hard to see because the projector's so far away, but every single map was made using parallaxing, which I did in Photoshop. And for those of you who don't work with Photoshop, it's where you have one layer that's behind and another layer that's on top. So the whole idea is that if you're in a forest in a game and you want to be able to have the player walk behind a tree, you would make the top half of the tree the top layer, and you'd make the trunk and the base the bottom layer. That way the player walks on top of the bottom, but behind the leaves. I had to do that for every map, all 1,000 of them. And of course, the other issue with RPG Maker was that you're so restricted to your graph that you have to place things in a grid, which I thought looked terrible. So we did all the basic stuff, I would paint grass and sand and walls in Engine, and then I would export that file out to Photoshop and then paint on all the dirt and all the snow and everything else that had to go on as detail work. But all that aside, it was a very interesting project, and definitely I loved this despite how difficult it was, and it was great because there were so many options that were open. And honestly, RPG Maker is incredibly simple. The main issue is that it can be too simple. So, I'm sure a lot of you have seen on Steam, back when we had Greenlight, it was just flooded with RPG Maker games. Because you could make a game in an hour right? And then you could put it on green light if you wanted to. Nothing's stopping you. But then you just get flooded and flooded and flooded. So when we actually first put this out on green light, I got bombarded. Like, bombarded with RPG Maker trash, no effort, game's horrible, like, nothing even related to the game, just that it was made in RPG Maker. But I had expected that. And thankfully, and this is something that I will get into that is just an unfortunate part about this, is that there's a lot of luck in this industry. You know, I can work as hard as I want, and you guys can honestly work as hard as you want, but you just got to be open to those opportunities that you're just not expecting, honestly. I mean, with this, some opportunities were good, some opportunities were bad. One of my musicians, we met him in the hookah bar simply because it was a Future song, wasn't it? Came on playing, and he was like, "Oh, I produced this." We're like, "Bullshit, no you didn't." And then he pulls up and he did it. And his whole secret was that he would find celebrities, right? And he would try their Apple IDs and just keep trying. And eventually he'd get through. And one of them was Chanel West Coast from Ridiculousness. And his whole thing was that he just kept FaceTiming people trying to get Chanel West Coast. And he got her. And he said, "Hey, we met in LAX. Do you still want to do that album together?" And she said, "Yes." Because these people don't remember who they met in LAX. So that's how, I'm willing to admit the biggest mistake we ever made in this industry was related to that, and I hope you all learn from it. Just because you think a celebrity is going to hit your target demographic does not mean that target demographic cares what that celebrity has to say about it. Because I was told, "Oh yeah, Sam, this is great. You got to get Chanel West Coast to endorse the game. It'll be perfect." And I'm like, "Yeah, that makes sense. You know, she has a large audience that's, within the age group that likes to play video games." No, like not at all. It was $9,000 for a social media post. And it was great because she ended up getting like 30,000 likes or something, but nobody bought it. Nobody cared. Like nobody cares about Chanel West Coast video game recommendations. But it's one of those things where it's one of those things where you really don't have to deal with it that often, but it definitely helps when it comes to working with people that are at a higher level, which I'll get to because this actually led to one of the biggest connections we had. And I'm like jumping ahead of myself because I got to get through the games. I talk about all this, but a lot of these all led to major connections, which culminated to where I got to today. And I will get to all that, of course. This was my second game. I don't have a lot to show for PDPD because this was a very interesting project when we were doing it. This was the game that we worked on immediately after the first one, and we decided we want to do everything in 3D. We're going to go do CryEngine. It's going to be great. We obviously didn't know that CryEngine cost $25,000 a year per license at the time, but man, we really believed in it. So we ended up jumping to Unreal, and this was the first game that we made in Unreal Engine. And it's a game, and it runs. And that's about what I got to say about it. It's so when we were doing this, I had such a large group of people working with me at the time. It was very strange because when we had gotten into E3 for the first game, my programmer quit abruptly the day before E3 when he was flying out there with us. And I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. Like, I'm losing people. And there were probably about 9 to 10 people at that hookah bar who were all like, I'll help you. And we grew to like 14 people in a day. And so we had enough to have 2 teams. So we had one that was working on 3D. And I also want you guys to keep in mind that every single person who works with me was self-taught. Everything made was based on YouTube videos and help from people. Nobody went to school for any of this. This was us just bashing our head at a wall trying to make video games work. But PDPD's main issue was that we wanted to do a lot with it and there wasn't enough time. Being such a small studio, one of the biggest hindrances we have is we always need money. This is a very expensive industry to be in, and I will break down a lot of things, and I think a lot of things I have to say are a lot more useful because I'm speaking to an American audience instead of the Germans. I can't tell them how to do their taxes, but So after PD, we had a bunch of different games we worked on, none of which would really stick. We're like, we had to get something out because it's been a year. We haven't done anything else. And we managed to release our third game, Static, which I am so incredibly proud of because this is a real representation of like the 3D modeling that everybody in Dogwood can do. This was a very interesting project because the entire map was built in a month because my 3D team said they could do it and I didn't believe them and then they did it. The whole thing, this was a 10-story apartment building. Each floor has at least 6 rooms in it. All are fully furnished, as well as all of the outside buildings and all the advertisements. It was a lot, and I was shocked they did the whole thing. But I loved this because this was so much more of like, this is what I wanted to show that like we can do. And this was a real labor of love, as it was also, this was the first game that I did all of the programming 100% by myself. As I said, I'm not a programmer at all. This was a real experience because, you know, for those of you who have worked in Unreal, you know they have blueprinting, which is essentially just scripting, and it makes programming that much easier. It's no longer do I have to remember all the syntax and everything. It's just, do you understand the logic of it? Yes, then you can program in blueprints. And 100% serious. If any of you want to get into programming for Unreal, if I can do it, you can 100% do it. Way easier than I can. So, as I said, those were the 3 I finished, but there were way, way more that didn't make it at all. And this was probably one of the hardest things for me to really grasp when I was working in the industry, was that there were a lot of games I wanted to make, there were a lot of projects I wanted to do, and we can put our heart and soul into every single one of them, but some of them, things just happen and they don't work out. The one to the right with the vintage race car, that was a game that we met this guy. He's like 75 years old in Indianapolis who loves vintage race cars. His name's John Rafford, and he decided at the young age of 75 he wants to learn 3D modeling. And he picked the whole thing up immediately and decided he's only going to model vintage race cars. These things are absolutely insane. They are photorealistic. He's done all the engines, all the parts, every little moving piece to these cars that honestly are lost to history. Most of them, they don't exist anymore, and John Rafford's model is the closest thing you're going to get to it. So I was talking to him one day, like, oh yeah, we're like trying to find a new game to do that we can work on. And he said, oh, you can have my cars. I was like, are you kidding me? It was like $20,000 worth of models he just gave me. I was like, you got it. We'll make a game around it, 100%. And I loved this because, so here there's the Laurel racetrack that we have now. It's where Xanadu is now. But it used to be a wooden board racing track for the old race cars. And so the first level I ever did was the Laurel racetrack, which is really cool because I got to go through all the historical records to see exactly how it looked and how it was. You want to know what killed that one? Mercedes. You can blame them for that one not happening because they wouldn't even open the conversation to discuss using anything they were involved with, which was really unfortunate because a lot of these tracks and cars, they don't exist anymore. They're all gone, but Mercedes still has their fingers in everything. And I remember when I called them, I didn't get past them saying $250,000. Like they said that, I was like, nope, we'll deal with it later. But that was how all of them were. None of them wanted to deal with us because we weren't one of their like affiliates. You know, we aren't making Forza, so I can't just go to Mercedes and be like, hey, we need the rights to everything. But that's just one of the many stories for all these projects. Every single one of them didn't happen in a very similar way. The one on the left is the last one that I'll talk about here. But the one on the left was a game called Death and Taxes. That was actually made by my first set of interns, which was amazing. I don't trust myself with interns, but they turned out okay. But they came up with this idea, and I was like, this is amazing. It's a 4-player co-op game where you play as these tax collectors in Dutch colonial Indonesia, and this guy stopped paying his taxes, so you got to repossess his house. And you get to this ginormous, like, colonial tropical mansion, and you find out that he's gone missing, and these mutants that he's created are now coming after you. So it's a 4-player co-op game where you're playing as these tax collectors who are just picking up whatever weapons they can find and murdering mutants. I had a lot of fun with it. But so this one is another example of that. Sometimes games get too large, and if you just don't have that funding behind it, they can't keep going. This game was entirely dependent on it getting into MAGFest's indie section. It did not. And that was a really tough blow. But it's one of those things where you just have to keep pushing with it. And I want to make it very clear that all these projects are still saved on this computer. They aren't done. I'll do them eventually. It's just once the money's there to actually do them, we'll get to it. So I talked all about the games, but I want to get into more, not just rambling about the things that I've done for the past few years, but actually might be helpful for you guys. I like to think that when we opened our studio, we made sure we went through all the proper channels to make sure we could do everything. And one of the biggest things is I will walk you through the steps to get a free ticket to E3. That's easy. So our whole thing was that when we started Dogwood, we weren't an official company. We were just a bunch of dudes who sat in a hookah bar and played video games and sometimes worked on our own video games. But we saw that E3, you could apply for a developer ticket if you were a real company and you had 2 forms of identification. We're like, oh, we can do that. It's super easy. So we went on LegalZoom, chose the most expensive option, and boom, they sent me that book. It looks real nice on the shelf. But what's great about this is that this opens literally every door. I cannot stress this enough that if you are opening, if you want to do your own studio, it is worth every penny to do this because you can't launch on console without this. You can't. Most every online store requires an EIN number. Your federal EIN number you get from opening your business, and there's a whole bunch of doors there. And the biggest thing, number one thing, I'm not an accountant, so take this with a grain of salt. Tax write-offs are amazing and incredible, and the only way that I could afford to do any of this, because the operating costs are so high that if I wasn't able to write off literally everything, there's no way I could justify anything. I mean, for those of you who are doing artwork already, 3D artwork, Maya's what, $1,500 a year? ZBrush is $800. God, there's so many of them, and I always see the reoccurring charges and have a mini heart attack. But it's one of those things where you have to try and make up for it because it's so expensive to do everything. And I mean, thankfully, Epic's done a lot now where they've been buying a whole bunch of the smaller, different development programs that would help, and now you get them for free if you use Unreal, which I'm not trying to shill Unreal on everybody, but I think it's pretty great. So because of opening my own studio, it opened all the doors to me going to a lot bigger events and networking, which honestly is, if you take away anything from this, it's that this is the most important thing of the whole development experience, is that once you've done it, that you can talk about how great it is and win people over. You're not just doing that to sell the game, you're doing that to everybody in the industry. But the other secret is that everybody in the industry, and I'm not kidding you, I haven't met a mean person yet. Every single person has been so friendly and welcoming. It blew my mind, especially because I told you I went to E3 with an RPG Maker game. Okay, I had hand-drawn characters, and I had the lead developers from Ubisoft telling me what a cool idea this was. I mean, sure, they were just being nice, but I mean, still. That was huge to me, and that was how all of them were. Do any of you play Mountain Blade? Fine, dude. I literally ask that at every single time, every single time that I speak, because no one seems to really appreciate it. They're the nicest people in the world. My God, there was a giant Bannerlord 2 booth at the first E3 I went to, and I lost my mind. I was like, oh my God, I can't fangirl over them because I had to be professional, but wow. And the thing was, their lead developer was there, who was so excited that I was a fan, which kind of surprised me because it's a pretty, well-selling game, but so excited. It was a press-only booth. He let us come in and see it, gave me all the swag, and then when I got back, added me on Facebook and then proceeded to invite me to every single thing that like Tail Worlds went to for an event. I was shocked. Like it was just not what I had expected, because you look at the video game industry and it's like every other entertainment like any kind of entertainment company. It's hard to get into. It seems cold, and it seems like nobody's trying to like let anybody in. And unfortunately, that's a lot of it until you finally manage to break through. Because once you're in and you can talk to these people, they're all super nice and willing to help you in any way they possibly can. And I 100% mean that. I mean, these were people who were so established in their field, who like were like 2 first-timers at E3, and they're like, oh, this game's great, like come show it off to the rest of the developers. Like unheard of. If that happened in like the movie industry, I wouldn't believe you at all. But, E3 was just one event. It's opened, like E3 was just one, but I've gotten to go to a bunch of other ones that I was invited to, which still shocks me, honestly. I had mentioned to some of you who were here earlier that I went to Germany to speak about this, and that I think serves as like the pinnacle of this example of that like networking is key. So, and back to my point about luck, because this is a very like, there was like one chance for this to happen and things just lined up. So right when I released my first game, we didn't have any marketing at all. That's always been Dogwood's #1 flaw, is that nobody is gifted at marketing, and we just do our best to try and figure it out ourselves. But this was our very, very early stages, so we had nothing. And there was this YouTuber who I watched a lot for 3D modeling named Mike Hermes, and right around the time when our game came out, his sponsor dropped him. And so I thought, oh, well, at least he's relevant to the industry. He's not like Chanel West Coast, it might actually be helpful. And that has been the most valuable friendship I have ever made. Because there was that small period where everything lined up for us to work together. And I mean, we obviously, we don't sponsor him currently, but he still sends things my way, and he still looks out for me. He invited me to speak at Munich, which I keep saying, like it like completely shocked me, because some of the people there was a girl who, she worked for a video game startup, and shut up, Tyler. I know I keep telling this story, but it's a good one. So she like works for a video game startup in Berlin. And I was like, oh, what'd you do before that? And she's like, oh, I was a production manager for Lucasfilm. I was like, oh, okay. So, and like undersold herself. She had a whole IMDb page, worked on like the Avengers, all the Iron Man movies, like huge list. And I'm up here talking with these people, and I'm just like, I feel way out of it. But all of them were super welcoming. And what I think really serves as a testament was there were these 2 girls we met in our hotel who they had, it was an award ceremony too, and they had nomination badges on. And we're like, oh, what are you guys nominated for? And they're like, oh, we do all the cinematics for Wizard of the Coast and Square Enix. Like, oh. And they're just like, yeah, we're nominated for Best Cinematic of the Year. And I'm like, yeah, of course you are. So there's this cocktail party afterwards, and like, we're all drinking with them, and my friend Sean, who was with us there, he's talking to one of the girls who worked with Square Enix, and she asked me, she's like, oh, what do you do? And Sean has just recently graduated from college. Like, literally, he had graduated that spring, and then he was speaking at this conference in November. And he was just like, oh, well, I'm a recent graduate. And without skipping a beat, she looks at him and says, you want a job? I'm like, what? Like, hadn't even seen his portfolio, hadn't seen anything. But Sean's a really personable person. And that's a lot of what it is. I consider myself I'm an introvert extrovert. Like I can speak in front of people, and like I don't mind. I mean, I'm dying on the inside, but I don't. But I try not to show it. But when it comes to like speaking with people in the industry, it's very easy, and which shocked me, because I'm thinking like, oh my God, like I love all these games. How am I going to talk to everybody? They instigate the conversation, and one of the biggest things I learned was that all these people who work in the industry know exactly who's going to be talking to them. It's either going to be people who are, colleagues in the industry, people that want to snipe them for a different company, because that happens literally all the time, or they're someone who wants to get in the industry. And because of that, I was approached first 90% of the encounters I've had, which makes me sigh like a huge sigh of relief, because I don't like dealing with that. But that's the thing, is it's one of those things where if you can go to the right events and you have the drive and the passion to do it, you will find the people who will help you. Because the executives and the like Todd Howards of the world, like, put them aside, and like all the developers who are there want people to come in the industry, because it's very hard to find passionate people that want to do this. You know, and that's a huge thing about the whole video game industry, is that it felt like a community to me. I never felt like I was alone, which was really great when I'm like working by like candlelight programming all night. But I know that like I have all these outlets of all these people who are rooting for you. And that's how the industry is. It's just random people will support you because they like what you're doing. And one of the things that like I try and tell people is that if your goal in life is to make a ton of money, don't make video games. But unless you run your own studio and you do hit it big, then yeah, 100% you'll be loaded. But like for the most part, up front, if you're a programmer, right, the exact same schooling to program for video games, you can go get a job that pays you double down in like Tyson's Corner. I mean, I'm not kidding, but it's one of those things where, do you want to program something you don't care about, or do you love video games enough that you want to make them and you're willing to deal with it? You know, it's like, I know you all see all the articles about like crunch time, and like that's obvious. Like, I mean, that's one of those things, but it's not an exaggeration when people say like, oh, like, yeah, it was long hours, but I wanted to do it. Yeah, because you're working in the video game industry because you want to. That's what's nice, is that, like, yes, I work very hard, but I wake up and I think I get to make video games. It doesn't feel like work. And it makes it that much easier to get through the day because of it. And that's one of the things that I think was the most helpful for me, was that building a community around you is very, very important. This comes in multiple ways. This applies to not just like getting in the industry, but also running your own studio. Better have a Discord channel for every game you make. 100% the biggest thing I ever learned. I'm a sad excuse for a gamer, considering that like I play video games all the time, but never use Discord, ever. Like it's rare if I have to use it. So, but I had to learn how to build a channel, moderate it, get people in it, and that's just one part of it, you know. But that's such a key thing for marketing your game, is building that community, because that's what people want. I mean, how much more likely are you willing to buy a game if the developer actually listened to what you said and implemented it in the game, and didn't just make useless like cosmetic microtransactions that don't help anybody? You know, it makes a big difference. And that's why all the games you see that do incredibly well and blow up, especially when they're smaller titles, is because the community the community is heard and listened to. And that's the most important. You know, I see it a lot when I'm talking to other developers, is that it's very hard to take criticism. And I get it, because if I had $1, like every single person told me to like delete all my work and kill myself, I wouldn't have to like make video games anymore. Like, and it's, you know, it's easy to say like you got to have thick skin, but like it sucks, 100%. But that's just how it is. When you put your art out there, you really are opening it to every single criticism. But you have to remember that for all the random anonymous people with anime profile pictures who are gonna like tell you that your work's awful and you should kill yourself, there are way many more people who actually work in the industry who will tell you genuinely, this is awesome and you're on the right track. Honestly, like, and I don't want any of you to be discouraged doing this, because I mean, I'm not sure how old all of you guys are. I'm 25 years old, and you know, this is like 4 years of doing this. Feels like it's aged me a lot, and there were all these things I wish I had known, I wish I could have done before I even started this company, because I feel like it would have made my life a lot easier. I want to get into those so you guys don't make the same mistakes I did, and you've been so kind listening to all of my anecdotes and monologues. So I'll show you, that's what you don't do, but I'll list the things you need to do. This is my character code for the main character from Death and Taxes. This was very proudly featured on Reddit because it is the definition of spaghetti text hell. Like this is horrible. Like, do not program your games like this. This was so early into when I was learning how to develop that I was so scared of using arrays that I figured that if I just made infinite if-then statements, the problem will go away. You know what that does? Makes your game unplayable because it bogs down systems. Yep. So, yeah, that was one thing. I mentioned about Death and Taxes not getting into MAGFest. I was blown because I didn't get any feedback, and I was like, did it not run? Was there a bug? Is it literally unplayable? No idea. But it's one of those things where I'm pretty sure the issue with this is optimization. But so for getting in the industry, there was an easy answer 2 years ago. I would have said, go find a way to fudge your way to get into E3 for free and bring your resume and portfolio and you'll leave with a job. 2 years ago, that was 100% true. So E3 was industry only, and then they opened it to the public. And I mean, MAGFest is my favorite convention. I don't think E3 being a con now makes it better. It's not. But it drove all the developers away. So the first year they went public, they had a 66% drop in industry attendees. So it wasn't even a trade show anymore at that point. And it was a shame because the first year that I went, it was one of those things where everybody who was in the E3 convention hall you wanted to talk to because they were involved in the industry one way or another, even if they were, fudging it like some people were. I met one guy who he worked as like a cashier at a laser tag place and they gave him free admission because technically laser tag is gaming, and so he got in for free. It's just trying to meet the right people to get forward. Honestly, the best bet and the best suggestion that I can make for now is if traveling is an option, there is a convention in March called the Game Developers Conference. That is a huge one. And what's great about that is for multiple different reasons, but one being that so there are panels in that, kind of like how MAGFest does it, obviously, but they're like lead lighting designer for the Call of Duty series, and he'll talk to you for 2 hours how he made the lighting and God rays and more and more and more God rays. And it's just like all these like high profile talent that's there. And then on top of that, filled with booths, most of which are recruitment stations. I know for a fact Blizzard has a huge one every year. Just like they're just taking resumes and doing interviews at that convention. On top of that, again, if travel is in your budget, that whole event is a huge thing for gaming because the first week is the Game Developer Conference, which is where you can mingle and meet different people in the industry. But immediately after, in the same city, is I believe it's called Games Connection. And Games Connection is where all the publishers go to pick up smaller titles for that financial year. So it's one of those things where I was under the impression that everything happened at E3, and after banging on Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo's doors, which it's wild. They build like full compounds in like the E3 convention center every year. But they were all like, we've already chosen who we're picking up for this year, try again later. I was like, okay, well, that's not very helpful. But it all happens at Games Connection because all the publishers send their people out there to see what you have. And it's one of those things where with the price of admission, you get your own section, like your own booth space where you can show everything. But that's one of those things where you really have to have everything in order. Like if you've already finished a game and you think it's fantastic and you're ready to go take it out there, yeah, 100% take it to Games Connection and see if somebody's going to back it. I mean, that's a lot of it. Do you remember No Man's Sky? No Man's Sky is a fantastic example because before they made No Man's Sky, they had one game under their belt. It was a Wii game that I'd never heard of. That was it. One Wii game. And then many, many years later, they go and make No Man's Sky. And my thing is, they make No Man's Sky. I think they got $16 million from Sony. Like, random company somehow getting all this huge amount of money from Sony is a very clear connection that someone knows someone, and that's why that partnership happened. It's an unfortunate thing, and the best thing is like try to get in it as well. If travel isn't a thing, That's okay because I didn't meet all my connections from having to travel. I mean, like I can say go sit in a hookah bar all day and eventually you'll meet someone, which is, true, but don't do that. Smoking's bad for you. But try and curate yourself online because I discovered there are a lot more non-degenerate channels than there are degenerate channels, which shocked me. I've been very fortunate that I've gotten to be a part of all these different Unreal development groups, 3D modeling groups. I don't know if you guys use ArtStation, but put your portfolio on ArtStation because it's super important and that's literally all anybody sends me. So I've just kind of accepted that that's the industry standard because that's all I ever get. But it's nice because all these different services and channels and forums connect you to the right people to actually make things happen. And most people, honestly, I assume most of us live in the DMV area. We don't have very many video game studios around here unless you want to work for Bethesda, in which case I'm trying to be very careful because you never know when someone from Bethesda is actually here. But good luck. I couldn't get in. I tried. I know 7 people that work there on a friend basis and I can't get an email back. And that's a big reason why I try to do these talks because that's not fair, honestly. People work so hard on these things and can't get anywhere. And honestly, the only way I was able to get to where I currently am is from starting my own studio, which is a lot to ask of a lot of people, but I'm really happy that a bunch of you actually do want to start your own studios. It's 100% worth it, and you have to keep looking at where you're going and know that it will get better. I tell myself that every single day because it's always something. When it comes to running the business end of things, I hate it with a passion. I just want to make games. That's all I want. I don't care about having to write contracts and deal with the bank. I hate the bank. There's nothing positive about it. When I was working with that YouTuber he's in the Netherlands, okay? I had to go to the bank to send money to him. The person at the bank whose sole job is to wire money overseas did not know that the Netherlands was a country. And that was a very difficult thing for me to explain because she was like, what country is the city of the Netherlands in? But it's one of those things where if you can get through the business part of it, you will succeed. Honestly. That is, we have no issues coming up with games and working on them. It's just keeping the money going and keeping it there because this is a very expensive industry to keep going. We've been pretty fortunate that my operating costs are fairly low, but I try to do everything I possibly can to make it so that we can function as a studio. I make sure that we have all the licenses we need and that all the people that need them have them. And it's been nice because we've actually been able to get a lot of work done for us by trading licenses, which was fantastic. And it's just, people are very happy if they see that projects are going somewhere, just something else. Obviously, please pay your artists. They work very hard and all the people you work with deserve to be paid. But people are going to understand that when you're first starting, there's not a whole lot you can do. Very few people start a video game studio with millions of dollars behind them and can just go hire all the people they want. I wouldn't be anywhere I am today if it wasn't for my friends and all the people who I've met who have put in countless hours and days into all the games we're making. And they all do it because they love it and they want to see this go somewhere. Those are the kinds of people you need to cultivate because you can teach literally any skill in the industry, but you cannot teach passion. And if you can't teach, and if someone doesn't have that, they're not going to be with you for the long run. So what I'm showing here is that it seems like things are hard and that you're not getting anywhere. And this was artwork from our first game. I remember when I first got this promo shot, this is about halfway through development. And I remember just looking at it and I was like, man, my characters look nothing like the promo art at all. And we had to go through and fix a whole bunch of them because of it. But I just remember how at that point it was so God, why am I doing this? This is a nightmare. This is so much work. I'm working all night, all the time. But I'm obviously not doing AAA now, but we're able to now do 3D characters. We can do rigging. We can do animation. Doing these massive open worlds. This was a game that we were working on called Ocracy. that I had tried to bring to MAGFest. We're working on it. But this game was a huge thing that we wanted to do, where it was this giant open world 3D game, and we knew we could do it. We had all the assets for it, we had all the skills, but this was something that 4 years ago, I would have been like, no, there's no way. Give me like $5 million and 50 people, and then maybe we'll see something like this. So the thing is, it's always gonna be hard, and like I feel for all of you that like wanna work in this industry. I mean, when I was in Germany, the number of college students that came to me like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, I can't find a job. I'm like, I feel you, it really sucks. And the best advice that I can really give is just keep going. Like, it's worth it, it's 100% worth it. I love this, I live and breathe this every single day, and I wouldn't want anything else in the world. And on top of that, it's not always doom and gloom as I've tried to make, as like I've made it out to be. Because opportunities will always come your way, some that you wouldn't even expect. This, I wish I had the camera for it so you guys could see how it works. Out of the blue, guy comes in the hookah bar, and he's talking about that he works with the ALS Foundation. People who suffer from Lou Gehrig's disease and really have no movement at all, except for their eyes. So they made this camera that allows you to have like full movement of a mouse cursor with just your eyes. Now, I was wary when they first told me because, I've seen a lot of this demo hardware and like most of it can't like track anything and it's super, super buggy. This was perfect, like perfect tracking. I had no issues. I was playing Icebreaker on it, like no problems, totally fine. And so they were like, do you want to make a game for it? I was like, yeah, that sounds amazing. So this was, it's a endless runner where you're navigating your way through obstacles, and it's very like flashy and lots of explosions and particle effects. But what's great about it is that it's entirely controlled with your eyes. There's a ball there, and you move around the screen just by moving your eyes. It takes like practice to get good at it, but it works. And that's the thing is, I never expected this. I never thought that this was going to happen. But if you leave yourself open to these things happening, and keeping yourself open to whoever wants to talk to you about game design, because man, you never know who's going to come in and say they have a great video game idea, or that they really love what you're doing, or they have some random skill set. Just be open to people, because especially in this industry, it's hard to find people that understand everything that goes on with it. It's, as I said, the hardest thing for me to deal with on a daily basis is knowing that a lot of these projects didn't happen. All of them are my babies. I won't go on for rambling about all of them because there's so many of them. But I just, it's one of those things where I have to remember that it's not the end, and I'm just backlogging them, and we'll get to them. And I'm sure that like all of you who want to start your own studios, you want to make these huge games, huge open world, massive adventures, and all this kind of stuff. It's like, you'll get there, you will, and you can do it with a small team. It just takes that like passion and that effort to get there. But at the end of the day, all the people at this hookah bar have supported me from day one, and having this support group that's around you, and it doesn't have to be the industry. My friends have always been there for me, and it's knowing that no matter what, I'm not alone when I'm doing this that really makes it all worthwhile. And honestly, if you can cultivate a good support group, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have, it's way easier when you don't have to just sit there by yourself and wonder why nothing works. I mean, my good friend Tyler here has no idea how a lot of the stuff that I do works, but he always shows a genuine interest and lets me ramble at him about why it doesn't work. So I just want you guys to know that I wish I could give you all the answers for 100% how to get a job in the industry, but you can do it if you just keep pushing at it. Don't only look at the big studios as your only option. Look wherever you possibly can. Because there's not just games. Sometimes you'll find things like that ALS project where it's not, you wouldn't think you would find something like that, but so many companies are trying to gamify literally everything. I mean, I see it all the time now with a bunch of different random companies that want all of their training now done in some type of video game. Like, there are many, 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 many options out there. You just have to keep looking and keep trying to find it. Because if nothing else, this industry is super supportive. And, none of you have told me I suck yet. That was Tyler's cue, but thanks. But yeah, and I want to extend that to not just like, oh yeah, people, Asia will help you. If you guys need anything, any questions, any help, I have like 1 million business cards. I'm serious. If I can help in any way possible, I will, because I want people to come into the industry. And I mean that. You just have to reach out. And that's what I tell people. And a lot of people say that, but you'd be surprised how many people don't follow through on anything. You know, I will end on one more note, and then I'll open it to questions. I'm sure you all want to ask me why the hell I did any of the things that I did. But my last presentation when I was in Germany, because I spoke twice, and on the last day, this guy came up to me, and he was like, I love what you're doing. Like, I wish I could have made video games. You have so much passion, so much heart. I love this, love that. The guy's just rambling at me, and but he has a speaker badge for the convention. I'm like, who do you work for? Who do you speak for? He says, oh, I work for this company called Weta Digital. He did a presentation on 3D city construction because he worked on Endgame, Alita Battle Angel. He did all of King's Landing for Game of Thrones. Like, huge guy in the industry. And I'm just like, oh my God, why are you talking to me? And he's going on, he's like, please stay in touch. We'd love to work together. I want to hear what you're doing. He gives me his card, and I thought he was just, you know, like an animator or a 3D modeler. He's the head of software engineering. And like when I was on the plane home, I watched Alita Battle Angel, and when I got to the credits for Weta Digital, he was the first name on the credits list. And I was like, my God, like, but that's how it is. These people are so friendly and so nice. And if you have that drive, they will help you. I promise. Thank you for listening to me. I really appreciate it. Sorry, that was probably a long ramble. I really appreciate you all listening to me. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Yeah. So, how exactly, whether it be the beginning of the process, middle, or where you're at now, how were you able to kind of, I guess, secure funding for your
luck?
Yeah.
No, I mean, like, that's actually a good topic to touch on, because I don't think I touched a lot on that. It's hard. You know, we were very fortunate that when we were first looking for our first round of funding, a friend of a friend came in the hookah bar. He had more money than he knew what to do with and was able to get involved with us. But everything since then has been a massive uphill battle. For reasons you wouldn't think of, I was once turned down for an investment because I didn't ask for enough. And so, yeah, which still boggles my mind. But there are a lot of places that are looking for things, but you have to think that when you're looking for funding, and I learned this the hard way, is it's a business. Like, this is a business. I make video games because I love making video games. The money thing is just like, I have to pay people. People need to eat every day. But I don't know, it's just hard because you have to have everything in order, because people don't really understand the video game industry unless you're approaching like publishers or venture capitalist firms that actually do video games, but there aren't very many of them. So they're going to see, you know, your financial projections and your full business plan. And I had to write a full business plan for one of them, and it's like 70-something pages. Like, it's this huge document. And the thing is that, like, boggled my mind was that they were very adamant that they needed financial, like they didn't know what my financial predictions for how my game is going to do. Who the hell knows? I mean, I'm serious. Who knows? Like, I guarantee you everyone at Epic had no idea Fortnite was going to become the massive success that it did. And the thing was that I wrote all these financial projections, and I made sure that all my math checked out, and I got my numbers, and they were super conservative. Not a single person asked me about the numbers. I could have literally made up anything I wanted. And it's just one of those things where you realize that, like, God, these things are redundant, but you have to keep doing them because it's part of the business end of things. I guess my honestly best suggestion is, if you're look for online investment companies, because there are very, very many of them, especially if you're looking at. Talk to me afterwards. I know, yeah, I can't think of all of them off the top of my head, but I just went through all of them, so I do have them. Are there any other questions? Yeah, or voice to you? Yeah. You sure? Oh, okay. Yeah?
Okay, sorry.
I'll get to you, I promise.
Okay, first question. How do you feel about Kickstarter?
So, Kickstarter is, I wish it was easier for indie developers to use, which I mean seems strange because there's a new indie game, 3 or 4 or 5 new indie games every single day on Kickstarter. The big thing with it is that it requires a very large initial investment to even begin the Kickstarter. I mean, you have to think about it. If a project exceeds its goal by an obscene amount, they had to have paid for advertising. I mean, I'm sure you guys see Facebook ads for some random Kickstarter for a board game every single day. Those add up over time. On top of that, there's a whole system where when you're doing Kickstarter stuff, I forget the name of the site, but it connects you with influencers. And literally, you have to like work where they end up becoming part of the project and end up profit sharing, just to get influencers to talk about it, right? Like, there's a lot that goes into it, and it's one of those things where I think it has a lot of potential, and you can definitely get 100% fun on Kickstarter. It just requires a massive amount of work before you even launch initially. Do you have a second question, or was it?
Yeah, I do. I'm a digital artist and music producer.
That's awesome.
But I was just wondering, how much money do you think it would cost to hire programmers to make programs?
A lot. No, I mean, I'm going to be honest. Everybody who I work with at the moment is doing this out of the kindness of their heart because they love it. And
I'm just asking because, sorry,
no, you're fine.
I'm asking because I'm more interested in like the musical and artistic aspect of making a game rather than the programming. I'm just not
No, yeah, I 100% understand.
I'm just wondering.
It's honestly, if you have a clear vision for what you want to do, like, is it like you want to make a game but you like want to focus on the music?
I want to make animations for it, but I don't really like programming, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. You don't have to program to make videos, which I don't know if I said that in my presentation, but that was a huge misconception that people have. Believe me, there is a huge shortage of artists and animators and everything else. 100%. Like, actually, here's the answer. You want to work in the video game industry, learn ZBrush and make 3D characters. You'll get a job. I mean, like, if that's what you want to do, if you want to make characters, that's the way to do it. No, ZBrush is it's for sculpting. It's so like whenever you see something with like heavy, no, you're fine. So when you see things with like heavy detail on them, or honestly characters, any character in a video game, it's probably made in ZBrush, just because it's used for sculpting and everything. If you, at the end of this, let me give you my card, and if you shoot me an email, I can add you to some of the development groups, and you can see if you can find people there. Because I see people posting projects all the time saying, oh, I want a programmer, or oh, I need a musician. And some of them are paid, and some of them are like unpaid, but as far as finding projects, it's pretty easy to like find people that want to do something. Yeah, you good?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I'm a artist.
That's awesome. Yeah. Oh, well, you're set then. Why are you here?
But so at the first we met, when it was starting up, the CEO basically was trying to figure out whether it was more advantageous to have everybody in one place or choose the cheaper option of having like a distributed team where like somebody's in California, somebody's in like Germany. What do you like? What's your experience with the pros and cons of both kinds of lifestyles? Do you have any remote?
I can actually talk about it because I do both, which is great. So for the longest time, it was all digital. I mean, I remember we would like meet up every Monday on Skype and just talk about what you want to do for the game, and that was how we met all the time. I now use Discord for everything, which I feel like accountability is a hard thing, and especially when you're working on these projects, you have to put a lot of faith in people that they're going to do everything they're supposed to do. And if it's all online, it's very hard to keep track of anything. I'm very fortunate that like a bunch of the people who I work with are overseas, and I'm able to just give them a list, and they are far more talented than I am, and I come back, there's a whole bunch of 3D assets for me to work with. But on the other side, I also do have an office. So, and which is nice. It depends what you're doing, honestly. If it's like, it's nice to meet in person to discuss overarching concepts and where you want to take the game. Voice acting too. That's actually why I use my office 90% of the time is to do voice acting in it. But honestly, it's better if you let people work on their own, I feel. But as far as actually doing concepts and ideas and like building the game itself, that's better to do in person, because what I found is like we'll like plan out for like a 30-minute meeting, but if it's in person to discuss how the game's going to go, we end up being there for like 3 hours. So, but if you do character modeling, please also talk to me after this. So, yep.
Besides not using RPG Maker, what is something you wish you learned about making your first RPG that you can make yourself?
It's a hard one. So I gave you something to think about it, because I want to talk about that in that I'm not a JRPG person at all. You can, like, this is huge blasphemy. I've never played a Final Fantasy game in my life. Yeah. But thankfully, my programmer at the time, he only played Chrono Trigger, and that's how he did all of our combat. But it's one of those things where what I found and what made the characters the most believable and the most interesting in an RPG is that you gotta put a lot into each and every single person. Every single companion that I made, and probably, well, yeah, there was an easier way to do this. This is what I wish I had known how to do. So when you start the game and you start working on it, this is like a detail thing, but it's very important and it will make a difference, I promise you. If you have people in your party, make sure they communicate with each other randomly in the game. And because you can set it up so it's a predetermined variable when things happen, but it feels like you have companions conversing with each other like that. And that's what's nice, is that making the people feel real is what really sold our game. I mean, we have, what made that first game worth it to me was we have one guy, he's a pastor in Alabama, who he has played like 800 hours of Ashes. Like it is like his favorite game. But his whole thing was he just went on about how much he loved the characters. That was it. He loved them so much. And you know, it was real awkward, because he would also send me like bug reports, right? When like he would find things that were off with the game. I remember one time he mentioned to me, he said, yeah, sometimes the female characters refer to their wives and like their male characters to their husbands. I didn't know how to explain it to him that homosexuality wasn't a bug, but, but you know, he was a pastor in Alabama, so it was, yeah. I mean, yeah, I have to say that if you're making an RPG, put all of your thought into that character. Because another thing that I found playing a bunch of video games recently is that they will include a lot of lore, like a ton of lore, but they're optional if people want it. Which is like, you may feel like, oh, why am I doing all this if it's not even a main part of the game? People notice. It's a huge, 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 huge thing. Does that answer your question? I wish I could tell you the secret to making an ultimate RPG, because I'd be a millionaire by now, but...
No, that was great. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah.
I was curious, have you ever made games for consoles, and if so, do you know what the process is for getting a game onto a console?
Yeah, so our current project that I'm working on right now is going to be launched on the PlayStation 4. How I mentioned that you need to have your own company, that is the key part for launching on consoles. Both Xbox and PlayStation require you to submit an EIN number. I think it's like $100. It's like Steam for launching games, but you have to have an EIN number. And then once you have that, you can launch on their stores with no issues. But Nintendo's a different story. What's that?
Does it cost money, or like
Yeah, it's like $100 for both of them.
just 100?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's how much Steam is too. But don't like quote me on this, because like I said, I haven't launched on consoles yet. I think they're the same way that Steam is, where Steam takes 30% of your revenue. I would believe it. So, I've launched on mobile as well. That's a much simpler process. And I mean, like, as far as consoles, literally all you have, like, as long as you have a formed company, you can launch on any console you want. Especially like if you're working in Unreal, it's as simple as when you do your inputs, just make sure you put a secondary input for controllers. And it works on consoles. 9 times out of 10, that's all you have to do. from my experience. Are there any other questions? Yeah.
In terms of resume portfolio building, what kind of skills do you focus on?
What was that first part? I'm sorry.
In terms of building resumes and portfolios, what kind of skills do you focus on?
Well, it really depends, like, what job you're looking. What did you want to do specifically in the industry? Or.
I'm kind of variable right now.
Oh, okay. I mean, it really just depends. It's one of those things where, like, don't get me started on, like, game development colleges, but, like, no one in the industry currently uses Blender. I wish they used Blender because I hate paying for Maya, but it's really unfortunate because, I mean, you know, how are people going to learn how to 3D model if it's not free? You can't expect people who are like to just shell out the well over $1,000 for this program every year. Hell yeah. I don't condone that, but hell yeah. No, but and like so when you're looking at like doing your resume, you really want to focus on the skills that are industry standard. It's one of those things where I've run into that issue where so for like 3D modeling, for instance, right? So if people are looking for like prop modelers, they'll usually ask for things like 3ds Max because 3ds Max is a lot more tailored towards doing technical things. But if you're doing general models, they'll like, we want Maya. Similar concept, but it's an entirely different skill set. You know, it's you try different programs 100% and like pirate them. Like try them to like pirate them to try them. I'm not saying pirate everything. I don't condone that, but try them, see which ones you like, and then once you know which direction you want to go in, then find the industry standards and go that way. And if you talk to me after this, I'll give you my card and you can just tell me, and I can let you know which programs you need. Does that sound good? Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing. If any of you have like student IDs, you can use Autodesk for free. Oh, you don't need the ID? Oh, could you just put like a random email, can't you?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, do that. Just know that you can't sell anything you make in the student version. That's the biggest one. Yeah. Are there any other questions? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. If you want to use any of the Autodesk products, you can register for a student license. And you can put in whatever the hell you want. You can all say you work for Dogwood Gaming and they don't care. like you can do John Doe at Dogwood Gaming and be like, oh, yep, that's a university. And that's all you have to do. And then you can use the student license. You can't sell anything you make in the student licenses, but it's a good way to practice and try it. Also, Blender has gotten massive investments from different video game companies, and they're usable now. So they actually fixed their whole UI. So I honestly say give it a year or two, and you'll actually start seeing Blender will actually start coming into the industry, I think. Any other questions? Yeah?
In terms of like presenting your game at conferences or just like going
Nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Sure. Or just like going to conferences in general. Is there like any particular ones you recommend for people who don't know anyone in the industry?
Yeah, honestly, it's a shame because I would 100% say E3. I mean, my first year at E3 will make up for all the negative experiences when it wasn't industry only. It's just that like, it's going to be a lot harder to approach people. Honestly, if you can, and it's like an affordable thing, get the Game Developer Conference in March. Honestly, that's like because the people who go to that are the people who are actually really passionate about about making video games, and those are the people you want to meet. E3 is too much of that like. It's, you know, I love meeting people that like love to play video games. That's why I'm at MAGFest. But like, you're not going to meet as many people in the industry at E3 anymore. So, but definitely GDC is the big one for here anyway. They're in San Francisco this year.
Oh, is it a different place every year?
Yeah, it's usually some stupid expensive city every year. I think last year was Seattle or Portland. So, were there any other questions, or did we get everything? Yeah.
You said that most of the people were working kind of out of the goodness of their heart. I was wondering is that like a profit sharing, or maybe they work like a second job, or were they salarized through investment?
So a lot of it comes from, so I very much do not like having people, like they don't work for nothing. So like I can't afford to pay them a $60,000 salary and just bring them on full time. But if somebody wants to work with me, I'm like, okay, here's all of our licenses. You have access to all of our assets. Here's like everything you need. Any connections, I got you. So like I do my best to provide value to everybody as well. So it's not as like you're working for literally nothing, you know. Most everybody works a full-time job. I'm the only person who does this full-time. And for the most part, I was living off my savings when I first started this. But it's been, I mean, like, I don't mind it because I do this full-time, I can pick up a lot of the work from other people as well. So if somebody's like, oh, I have to go work at my other job, I'm like, that's fine, I got it, you know. Anything else? Are we all good? You guys were fantastic. You, like, man, I should have just, like, come here and said, screw Germany. This is way better. But thank you so much, guys. And, like, honestly, I'm 100% serious. If you guys want to work in the industry and if I can help in any way possible, like, please, I will. 100%. Yeah. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.